Namaskar, Adab, Sat Sri Akal, and a very big hello to everyone. Under the aegis of the Knowledge Nutshell channel, which is a very favorite channel of yours now, we are actually kicking off a new series with the name Legal Literacy for Everyone. As you all know, last year we celebrated the 75th independence of India, and it is very pertinent and imperative that India has to become a rule of law state. And for a rule of law state, the first condition is that every citizen should be aware of the rights and entitlements that the Constitution and the various laws give him or her. So with this objective in mind, we have taken up Preamble of the Indian Constitution as the topic today. So before we move forward, let me bring in front of you how the preamble reads. So whenever you look at any constitution book, you'll find that the preamble goes like this. We, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, and to secure to all its citizens justice, social, economic, and political, liberty of thought, expression, faith, belief, and worship, equality of status and opportunity, and to promote among them all fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individual and the unity and integrity of the nation. In this Constituent Assembly, on the 26th day of November 1949, do hereby adopt, enact, and give to ourselves this Constitution. So these brilliant 733 words actually constitute the very essence of the feelings, the aspirations of millions of Indians who fought the freedom movement, and it is at the same time a pledge that our founding fathers of the Constitution took when they drafted this Constitution. Now, before we go further into this matter related to preamble, let me give you some idea about the Constituent Assembly. Now, as you all know, Constituent Assembly was a collegium which was constituted to draft the Constitution for India. And this collegium had originally 389 members who were chosen out of the provinces of the British India as well as the princely states. And these 389 members, they sat together, the deliberations started, but later on, as we all know, when India and Pakistan became two separate nations, 14th of August, Pakistan became independent, and the next day, India became independent. 90 members of the Constituent Assembly who belonged to the area which actually fell in the part of Pakistan, they went to Pakistan and formed their Constituent Assembly, but the Indian Constituent Assembly was left with 289 members. Now this Constituent Assembly, as you all know, Shri B.R. Ambedkar became the chairperson of the drafting committee which actually formed the Constitution. Now there are three very important aspects related with the deliberations that went into developing the preamble. One is that the Constituent Assembly in its first meeting in November 1946 found Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru move a resolution with the name Objectives Resolution, which was actually nothing but all that we now find in the preamble. The Constituent Assembly discussed it, and in a month's time, it was passed by the Constituent Assembly, and the Constituent Assembly sat together to draft the preamble. While the preamble was being drafted, some members made some suggestions. For example, Hari Vishnu Kamath said we should have the word God in the preamble. But then there were others who would say that we should not bring God in the Constitution. Some people would say that we can't put God to vote. But as it happened, this suggestion could not get through and it was rejected by the Constituent Assembly. Similarly, Shibalal Saxena, he came out with, he was another very prominent member of the Constituent Assembly. He wanted Mahatma Gandhi's name to be incorporated in the preamble. But again, this was not approved by the Constituent Assembly. Similarly, Maulana Mohani, who again was a very important member of the Constituent Assembly, he wanted terms like independent or federal in the Constitution's preamble, but again the members did not approve of this. So this was about how very serious deliberations took place and the preamble started taking shape. Now and ultimately it was passed by the Constituent Assembly. Now I want to give you a global panel also. So when we look outside, we find that there are 194 countries who have got their constitutions, and out of these 194 countries there are 54 countries where we find that although the constitution is there, but there is no part like a preamble that we find in case of India. So in the case of those constitutions, the constitution starts right away, and you would be surprised to know that among those 54 countries are countries like New Zealand, Mexico, Thailand, Singapore, Italy, etc. Now the remaining 140 countries, when we look at the constitutions of the remaining 140 countries, we find that in case of 47 countries, the preamble kind of thing is there before the actual constitution starts, but it has either not been named preamble, or if it has been named, it gets some other title, not preamble as such. So now we are left with only 97 countries where India also belongs, where the constitution is preceded by a preamble which sets the tone for the constitution. You would be also surprised to know that the preambles have different sizes across geographies. So the smallest preamble belongs to Greece, which has only 11 words, whereas the longest one belongs to Iran, which has 3073 words. And as I've already told you, India has a relatively small preamble with 73 words. Now let's look at the various aspects of this preamble. So when we say sovereign, it very clearly says India is a sovereign, independent country, and it is not under any country's dominance. It can make its own laws and govern the country as per those laws. The socialist means that India has chosen to bring about a socialistic pattern of life in India, but through democratic ways. The word secular signifies that the constitution protects all religions in India, and at the same time there is no state religion. So the state would protect each religion and would not have one of its own. When we say democratic means we have chosen a representative form of government, wherein the Westminster style of parliamentary system which evolved in the UK, we have taken that up, and we have this system of a cabinet system, and then we have parliament where there are two houses and like that. And the last thing is republic. So by republic we mean that the day our constitution came into existence, which was 26th of January 1950, we had an elected president as the head of government, head of state rather. I would like to differentiate between head of state and head of government. In our system, the parliamentary system that we have in India, the head of the state is the President of India and the head of the government is the Prime Minister of India. So since we have an elected president and not a hereditary, we therefore are a republic. So republic is a nation in which it is a rule for the government, for the people, by the people, and the head of the state happens to be an elected person. So therefore we became a republic. Now I would like to also bring to your notice that when we became independent, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru took the call to continue being a member of the British Commonwealth. Now British Commonwealth is a group or club of nations where British had their colonies. And when India took this call to remain a member of the Commonwealth, it doesn't mean that we have sacrificed or compromised our sovereignty. Pandit Nehru was of the view that we would be a member of the Commonwealth as if we are, member of a club. And to that extent, we continue being a part of the Commonwealth. And as you all know, we participate in Commonwealth games, and therefore, our continuity in terms of relationship with the Commonwealth has been there. But for the purpose of governance, India being a republic has no dependence on British Crown. So this is how the 5 terms can be understood. Now, when we go to the next part of the preamble, which takes care of justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity, you will find that when you go deeper into the Constitution and you look into the fundamental rights, the directive principles, and the various articles pertaining to backward classes, scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, you find that the aspirations expressed by way of justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity, they are very much there. And therefore, we can safely say that although preamble does not have a legal power, but it sets the tone for governance, it gives the direction in which this great republic is to be run. So what we find from the preamble is actually 2 major strands. One is, it tells us what is the source of power for this republic. So when we say we the people, it becomes clear that the people are the power behind this constitution, this republic, and the governance that the country would follow. And at the same time, the second factor that it pushes is the objectives behind the constitution. So the objectives are, securing justice, liberty, fraternity, equality. So in totality, both of them, the source of power for the preamble and the constitution thereby, and its objectives, it makes it very clear that it becomes a very, very comprehensive declaration of the aspirations of people who fought for our independence, and they wanted that India should be one of the shining stars in the fraternity of world democracies. So this is how this whole setup is there. Now, there are 2 very important aspects that we need to keep in mind. One is the preamble a part of the constitution? You would be surprised to know that initial few judgments, and if I could recall one, that was in the presidential reference case of Barubari case, where the Supreme Court held that preamble is not a part of the constitution. But later on, as we find in judgments like Keshwanand Bharti, which was again reiterated by Minerva Mill case, then the S.R. Bomai case of 1994, then the K.K. Bhaskaran case of 2011, we find that every time the Supreme Court has now reiterated that preamble is a part of the constitution. Now, another very important aspect for which you should have a clarity is, can the preamble be amended? Now, there is a very interesting story that I would like to tell you. Preamble, as we all know, it actually enshrines the pledge that our founding fathers had taken, and it is probably one of the best examples of a constitution being preceded by a beautifully drafted preamble. In terms of whether it can be amended, I would like to tell you that it has been only amended once. The preamble has been only amended once, and if you look at the complete the infrastructure of this preamble, you will find that the words socialist, secular, these 2 words, and later the unity and integrity of India. So originally these 2 words were not there. So we would have a sovereign democratic republic. So through the 42nd amendment of the Indian Constitution, which took place in 1976, two words were added to preamble, which is socialist and secular. And in addition to this, the term unity of India was replaced by unity and integrity of India. And therefore, you find that it has been amended only once. And there is a very interesting story behind this, because 1973, the Supreme Court had already said that the preamble is a part of the Constitution, and this important judgment also is known as the basic structure judgment, because it said that although the Constitution can be amended, but the basic structure of the Constitution cannot be amended. That was a 1973 judgment. And in that judgment, while delivering the judgment, the Lordship also gave some examples, and few of them actually related to some terms which we find in the preamble. So the idea was that preamble cannot be amended, at least that part of the preamble which is like basic structure of our Constitution. But as you all know, in 1975 we had a national emergency which took away about 2 years of the glory of our Constitution, and it was during the emergency that in 1976, through the 42nd Amendment, and 42nd Amendment is known as a mini Constitution, because it is a sad commentary on the development of the Indian constitutional history, that through the 42nd Amendment, the then Mrs. Indira Gandhi regime actually tempered with almost all aspects of our Indian Constitution, and a major restructuring took place. And therefore, I made the remark that it was like a mini Constitution, and it was during that time that these 3 additions were made. Later on, we find that in the 44th Amendment, when the new government had come and the Janata Party regime had come, many of the changes brought about by Indira Gandhi regime, they were overruled and they were replaced by the original text. So this is how it has been amended, but beyond that amendment, no amendment to the preamble has ever been made. And it will be very curious to look at the amendments that were made, because as you would have noticed, there were some additions only, no deletions. So bringing socialist and secular and unity and integrity of India was seen as majorly acceptable. In this regard, I would like to give an anecdotal evidence about these 2 words, because when the preamble was being fought, even then there were members who would say that secular and socialist should be added in the preamble, way back in 46, 47, 48, etc. But then Mr. Ambedkar vehemently opposed it, and he was of the view that these 2 words, socialist and secular, they actually talk about how the Indian populace is going to define itself in the years to come. And in his view, it should have been left to their wisdom. And this is how in the initial stage, these 2 words did not find an inclusion in the preamble. Now, in the same line, I would like to bring to your notice that through a private member's bill recently, an attempt was made to bring amendment to the preamble, and Mr. KJ Alphonse, who is a BJP Rajya Sabha member, he moved a private member's bill seeking some amendments to the preamble, but till now nothing much has moved in this. And I must tell you, for your understanding, that a private member's bill is a bill moved by a member of parliament who is not a minister. As we all know, for making a law, a bill is moved by the concerned minister, and when a bill gets passed, it becomes an act. But if such a bill is moved by a member who is not a minister, he could be from the ruling party or from the opposition parties also. such a bill is known as a private bill, and this actually created a lot of interest in the people who follow the preamble, that such an attempt was made by Shri K.J. Alphonse, but it is still not got further into the discussion stage of the parliament. With this, and before I complete, I must give you an example of how our work while drafting constitution and while drafting preamble particularly was highly acknowledged, praised. I'm reminded of Mr. Ernest Barker, who was a leading constitutional expert of the UK. When Indian constitution came into being, he was so impressed by the preamble that he remarked that it is the keynote to the Indian constitution. So it kind of opens the gate or door for anybody to get inside the Indian constitution. And no wonder when in 1951 he wrote a very popular book which is titled Principles of Social and Political Theories. He, in the very first page itself, he made a mention of the Indian Preamble and how significant and profound its presence was in the scheme of things of the Indian Constitution. So therefore, with this discussion on preamble comes to an end. I'm very sure I've been able to give you an understanding about how preamble was conceived, what it contains, what it means to in terms of constitution, and needless to say or overemphasize, this constitutional system actually gives so much of prominence to preamble that every and each word written in preamble is like a sentinel keeping a watch over the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. The executive, while they are executing laws, have to be very sure that they are not doing anything which is damaging the spirit of the preamble. The same goes while forming laws. The legislatures have to be very, very careful that the laws that are made are in tune with the spirit of the preamble, and at the same time the judiciary, while adjudicating upon the various laws etc., has to be very, very careful that the spirit and the philosophy of preamble has to be protected. So with this, I believe you all have a fair idea about our preamble, and I'm very sure that you would be full of pride because this preamble has actually set the tone for the success of our constitution, and we have successfully completed now 73 years of our constitution, and I'm very sure that it is going to guide us in future also. In future also we would be coming out with various videos, rather a weekly video on important topics related to legal literacy, and I'm very sure that the audience is going to benefit from it. And as I said in the beginning, it would be really beneficial to them if they view the video in one go, and be it the students, the housewives, the practitioners. I'm very sure we'll be bringing in some novel, some unknown, some facts which have not been discussed too much to energize their perspective about various topics being discussed. Kindly keep supporting us like this, and I'm very sure over a period of few weeks or months or maybe years, I think we would have all done our duty towards making this great country a rule of law nation. Please take care. Namaskar.